Now, next week, the 7th film in the Rocky series is released in the UK. It's called Creed, and it stars someone who might be familiar to Five Live Boxing listeners.
Your father was a great man to me.
I don't know him. Ain't got nothing to do with me.
Well, I think you could be great, too.
This kid's been nowhere. He's never faced nobody. You don't know nothing about me. You a false creed.
You do this, you're going into a storm.
Yes, that was a Scouse accent with Sylvester Stallone and Michael B. Jordan, and it comes courtesy of British cruiserweight boxer and summariser for Five Live Boxing, Tony Bellew, who joins us now. Evening, Tony.
Evening, guys. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for coming on. Is it, well, surreal, I suppose, to hear yourself in a trailer, to watch yourself in what is an iconic series of films? It
is. It's very surreal, and I still... You know what, I've actually watched the movie tonight. I've been in the cinema to watch it with friends and family. And once again, I just can't believe what I've witnessed tonight. I still can't get my head around that I'm part of this fantastic, amazing franchise and series. And it just seems surreal. I'm waiting for somebody to wake me up still.
So hang on a minute. So tonight you've just gone to not a premiere or anything. You've just gone to a local cinema, have you? And gone in with friends and family and paid and watched yourself?
No, I had a private screening.
Oh, right, okay, right.
Because I wanted my friends and family, close friends and family, to see it. And a couple have seen it tonight, and it was just, it was strange watching it back. That's the second time I've seen the movie now, and it's just nuts.
How did it all come about then?
It came around through a phone call. I was on my way home after watching Everton get trounced 6-3 by Chelsea last season.
Right.
And a guy called up, and I just thought he was having me on. So basically, you can imagine the phone call. Evan had just been beat. A guy calls me up, tells me he wants me to be in a Rocky movie, and my basic words were, "Come on, mate, pull the other one. I've just seen my team get battered 6-3. Diego Costa scored how many goals? I'm not in the mood. Leave me alone." Anyway, this guy persisted. He persisted, and it came down to, in the end, I said, "Listen, mate, come on. A joke's a joke. Where have you got my number from? Who's put you up to this?" And he said to me, cut a long story short, I said, "I got the number from Ross Barkley." So I called Ross up. I said, "Ross, if you and the lads are winding me up, you're going to lose more than your wheel sims on your car." So he said, "It's not a wind-up. I know people over in LA, they're friends with my family, and they just want to talk to you." So the conversation, I'll be totally honest, I still believed it was a prank right up until I got on the plane to Philadelphia.
That is unbelievable. And you didn't take Ross Barkley to your private screening tonight, did you?
No, Ross didn't come. Ross will be training, and he's with the club, and he's on strict duties for bed early. So, no, Ross didn't come tonight. I think the lads are going to see it. We're going to have a screening for all of the boys and the teammates within the next week or so.
Were you nervous on set? Were you nervous when you first met Stallone? Because I would imagine you would feel out of your comfort zone.
I was very nervous when I first met Sly, yes. I mean, I remember the first time I met him, it was like, "Hello, Mr. Stallone, you know, I'm Tony, and son, I know you are, and don't call me Mr. Stallone, call me Sly." And it went on from there, and it was great. It really was. It was something that I struggled to get my head around, and like I say, to this day, I can't believe I've done it. I'm just a normal lad from Liverpool, and you know what, I've grown up loving the Rocky series. You know, Rocky 4, I used to love the 1 and 2 are just unbelievable movies, and now to think that I'm part of that kind of history is just, it's baffling. I just can't get my head around it.
Well, stay there, Tony. A few years ago on Five Live Sports, something like 4 or 5 years ago, I am going to name drop here, I interviewed Martin Scorsese and Robert De Niro about one of the most famous boxing films of all time, Raging Bull. And De Niro told me how he found filming the actual fight scenes.
Well, they weren't difficult. I mean, you're not having actual fights. It's all choreographed and stuff. If you had actual fights, and even Jake told me, he said, "Well, you know, what's the problem? You get in there and you fight." I said, "Well, we said no, you can't do that. We'd last 2 days. It's that." We shot those sequences. I remember the fight sequences for about 9 months, and the other stuff around 9, the dramatics. I followed the other part of the script, other than the fight scenes, about another 9 weeks, I think, and then two weeks or so, or 3 with the interim and the heavier stuff.
Yeah, because Martin said to me something like that at times there could be 9 or 10 people in the ring when filming the boxing scenes.
Right. Right. The technician is the cameraman, the assistant,
Sure.
camera assistant, the focus puller, a lot of.
Because if you had been allowed to box, Jake LaMotta has said, hasn't he, that you were one of his top 20 best middleweight boxers of all time.
Yeah, well, he was just saying that.
Really?
He's I mean, I worked hard on it and practiced a lot, with Jake, but it's a great exercise and a great thing to do when you can do it.
Robert De Niro talking to me a few years ago. How did you find the fight scenes, Tony? Were they harder than you thought? Because obviously you couldn't just clout people.
They're physically demanding, I will say that, but what I will also say is it's a lot easier taking pretend punches to the face than it is real punches to the face. That's the best way of saying that, to be totally honest. It was I pulled muscles on some days, pulled a couple of back muscles. It's an art learning how to do it, and don't forget, I lived in Philadelphia for 2 weeks before the Christmas came, and then I lived there for 10 weeks, from January right through till March, and I learned, I practiced every day. I went to the gym to work on stuff, and me and Mike prepared diligently for that movie, because Mike had three fights in the movie, and obviously mine is the spectacle one, the main fight, with me being the world champion in the film. So there was many rounds that we had to learn, choreograph, and we went over and over and over and over. We spent hundreds of hours just practicing every day between ourselves. So it was something else.
And according to Stallone, at one point, when you say Mike, you're talking about your co-star Michael B. Jordan. He told you to actually hit him. There is footage on the internet of this, isn't there? And he goes down hard.
Sly was adamant that Mike had to take a punch all the way through the build-up, and Mike kept saying, this ain't 1982, this is 2015. Mike was adamant that he didn't need to take this punch, and Sly was adamant that he did all the way through, and Sly kept winding him up. And then in the end, Mike bit down and gave into it. But, would I say it was a wholehearted punch? No, because I could never, ever really, truly punch a friend in the face. And Mike became a friend in the end. So it was more of a, shall we say, a heavy-handed slap.
Mike Costello, Steve Bonds are listening to this. When you watch a boxing film, Mike, the fight scenes are crucial, are they, to you, as to whether it's a success or not?
They're crucial, and they're quite often crude as well, and we're not necessarily the best judges, because we're bound to be harsher than those who don't follow the sport would be. I mean, when you spoke there to Robert De Niro, that was for a special that we did 5 years ago to mark the 30th anniversary of the release of Raging Bull. And what I did around that time, I watched the fights that were being depicted in the film, and they ranged from brilliantly accurate to actually quite woeful, even in the space of a single film. But they had something to go on. They had films, black and white films, of Jake LaMotta's fights, whereas the Rocky film, all of those fights are imagined anyway, so it's bound to be different. But as I say, I think they range widely, and those of us who follow boxing are not necessarily the best judges, because they're aimed at an audience far wider than us.
Yeah, there's a couple of films being made starting in March, so they'll probably finish filming in May, working on that same sort of 10-week schedule, being made proper movies, not documentaries. One being made by Paddy Considine, who got a BAFTA for directing Tyrannosaur, and also starred alongside Russell Crowe in Cinderella Man, and one by a guy called John Harris, who was nominated for a BAFTA for his role in Shane Meadows' This Is England, a TV series. Yeah. And what's interesting about Johnny Harris is that he boxed for Young England, and he also won 2 junior ABA titles as a boxer. Now, both of these films will be made, and I know both of the directors well, and they're both going to do some fairly novel things, and we might just have a situation where the fight scenes in these 2 movies might just be the best fight scenes we've ever seen.
Tony, do you want to do more? Has it whetted your appetite?
Do you know what? I'm not. If the right thing comes along, then maybe yes. But listen. First and foremost, I'm a professional boxer, and I'm a professional boxer who dreams of being a world champion. I've just become European champion. I've won the British, I've won the Commonwealth, I've won the European. I've beat former world champions. I've beat current world contenders, number ones, you name it. I've beaten everybody. All I have to do now is beat a world champion. So that's first and foremost on my mind. That's my dream. I get that done, and then I'm all for acting the clown on a camera.
So what's the career plan for 2016 then?
The career plan is to stay healthy, stay fit, fight often, and become world champion, and whatever else presents itself, then so be it. But I've never been one to chase anything or chase, avenues or people. So I'll just what it will be, and that's just me. For like I say, I'm first and foremost. My dad raised me kids, keep a healthy house, and then hopefully everything else works out.
Sounds like a house that's trying to do the washing up at the moment.
It's always busy, me, man.
Listen, enjoy being a star of an iconic series of films. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you very much for having me.
Cheers, Tony.
Thank you.
Tony Bellew, and Creed is out in cinemas next Friday, so that's the 15th of January. A film star, a champion boxer doing the washing up. Yeah.
Chappers, could I just say that I don't know how you got away with that line you used there when you were talking to De Niro.
Yeah.
Okay, with an interview, if you remember rightly, you and I had a bit of a confrontation about the interview.
Yeah.
And then you managed to get away with Marty said to me. I'm hoping you said Martin. I'm hoping you said Martin, because if you said Marty said to me...
No, I said Martin.
Okay,
and you'll be pleased to know that...
it's still borderline.
Yes, the production team raised their eyebrows at
Thank
that
you, darling.
as well. I've dropped a few names tonight. Do you know, I spoke to Noel Edmonds earlier.
Oh, that's...
Yeah, it's not quite up there
About
with
Exeter?
Yeah, it's not quite up there with De Niro.
It's quite interesting.
Just one final thing on the Rocky films. They are still influential today, aren't they? 40 years after the original was released. Mike, I'm not talking to you, Bunty, now. Mike.
Yes, they are, because I think, in a sense, they broke the mould. I mean, for me, there was a golden era of boxing films between the 1940s, mid-1940s to the mid-1950s, when you had films like The Setup with Robert Ryan, the best one I've seen, Body and Soul, with a guy called John Garfield playing a character called Charlie Davis, The Harder They Fall, which was adapted from a novel written by the great Bud Schulberg, who went on to write On the Waterfront and Marlon Brando and all that. That was a golden era, but they tended to focus on boxers who were forced into fixed fights and who were taken advantage of by gangsters and the mob, and they were all terrific films, but they were kind of one of a kind. And Rocky, to me, broke that mould, especially that first film. It really captured what boxers go through in the build-up to a fight, and it was the theme of the underdog who suddenly got this chance. And there are stories out there. It sounded outlandish, but you know that in the last 20 years in this country, Steve Robinson, a Welshman who was working in a warehouse for 50 quid a week with, I think, 9-10 days to go, was given a shot at a world title in the featherweight division and won that, defended it 6 or 7 times, and eventually was beaten by Nassim Hamed. It does happen, and I thought that was a really accurate reflection, apart from the fight scenes, of course.
Bunsey?
No, listen, I agree. I loved the first one. It was one you queued up to watch at different cinemas, and funnily enough, I liked the last one, the one which is the one where he's running a restaurant, and Spider Rico, his first opponent, who we see in the very first Rocky, sharing a cigarette in the changing room. Spider Rico's now washing up in his downstairs, and it's that type of detail.
He needs to go around to Tony Bellew's, though.
Yeah, exactly. It's that type of detail, and you can be a little bit critical of Stallone, because he really come close. Stallone really thinks he won the world heavyweight title. No, he does. No, there's no irony or comedy or wit in Sly Stallone. He genuinely thinks he won the world heavyweight title.
You know, Mark, one of the best experiences of my working life here, and especially as my time as boxing correspondent at 5 Live, we had 2 fights in succession on successive weekends. Amir Khan fighting Lamont Peterson in Washington, and then Carl Froch being beaten by Andre Ward in Atlantic City. And in between those, having stayed in the States and on the eastern coast of the States for those 2 weeks, in between the fights, I went to see the real Rocky, a guy called Chuck Wepner.
Oh, yes.
Who fought Muhammad Ali in the early part of 1975. And it was Ali's first fight after beating George Foreman in the Rumble in the Jungle. And he beats Chuck Wepner, but Chuck Wepner was bloodied and battered and bruised. And this out-of-work actor, Sylvester Stallone, is watching this at home in Philadelphia and decides to write the script, and bang, bang, there you go. And he was one of the funniest creatures I've ever met. And we played out the interview, actually, Mark. We ran a feature called The Real Rocky. And do you remember, Steve? He talked about when he fought a bear.
He listened to this. This is glorious.
And then had a rematch with the bear. And he says he swears the bear remembered who he was.
And he said, you know what? Let me tell you something. Never fight a bear twice, because the son of a you-know-what will remember you. That's the truth. You should listen to it. It's glorious.